Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Jen.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to season 6 of What Are You Listening To? The weekly podcast created to foster community through music by sharing the stories behind the songs that soundtrack our lives. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Nancy Lynch. Nancy is an intimacy coordinator and the owner of Class Intimacy Acts. She is an educator who believes the cultivation of human connection as at the intersection of art and intimacy. Art is an imitation of life and reflects the intricacies of our most honest self and world. Class Intimacy Acts uses art and creativity as a pathway to nurture the evolution of closeness, care, and connection in partnerships. This week, Nancy's going to share how music has helped foster connections and intimacy in her own life and work. As always, Nancy and I are going to get to know each other a little better through 4 songs. 2 are her picks and 2 are mine. Which songs do you think we're going to discuss? Tune into our conversation to find out. And in case our song picks are new to you, we'll publish a playlist with the episode so you don't miss a beat. With that, let's get started. Nancy, what are you listening to this week? I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Jen.
Well, I think before we jump into the music, let's take a quick second and let's just define for folks that maybe don't know, make sure my understanding is clear. Tell me, what is an intimacy coordinator? What is it that you actually do?
Yeah, so an intimacy coordinator is an intimacy professional who specializes in consent and boundary works in television and film.
Okay.
But there are actually a few other intimacy professionals in performance. There's also intimacy directors who work with live performances. And there are also intimacy coordinators, which is an intimacy professional who specializes in intricate movements for the intimate scenes that you might see in television, film, or live performances as well. So we
Okay, so
explore
is it almost the way you'd use like a choreographer to choreograph like a dance sequence, or like a stunt coordinator to choreograph a fight
absolutely.
scene? Is it similar to that?
Absolutely. It's exactly that.
Okay.
We actually use a lot of practices from dance or music when we are choreographing intimate moments because we use the 8 count that's used in
Oh.
dance or in music when we are choreographing each bit to make sure that those performers are feeling confident and comfortable in what they're doing. And it's kind of like a dance. It's like instead of it being a personal movement or them having to connect their personal lives to what's happening on stage or in that moment, we are using very technical terms, and we are doing it like a dance, dancing through a moment together and memorizing movements and steps.
Okay, that definitely helps me understand it a little more clearly, because I think you think of it like, I started to panic a little bit when I put myself in the situation of somebody that like a performer that might be working with you, and thinking like, oh my gosh, the panic that you must feel before something like that happens, not just because of the vulnerability required, but like the personal space violation almost, that feels like it's happening. But when you phrase it that you treat it almost like choreography and you use terms like a dance, it makes it seem like it can be an intimate act without feeling boundary violating. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can get close to somebody and dance and have it not be a, I'm air quoting, but have it not be a sexual thing. And it sounds like that's really kind of how you have to approach this type of work. Like, it has to be about the work or the job and not necessarily about the intimate nature necessarily, or the sex act or whatever that is trying to be portrayed on screen. Is that a fair way to think about
Yes,
it?
and we actually take out all of the connotations that are sexual or that could be, um, I guess, pandering towards it being a personal act of intimacy.
Got it.
Instead, it's very rehearsed, uh, and each performer has given their consent and created boundaries for what feels most comfortable. So we try to take them out of their actual human body or performance body and put them into, I'm going to restate that. We try to take them out of their personal experience
Yes.
and place their movements into their performing body to best portray the story that they're telling.
Love that. Yes, that makes a ton of sense now. Okay. Well, now we've sort of laid the groundwork for what it is that you do. And knowing that you sort of treat it like a dance and choreography, that feels like an awesome segue to get into your first song. So tell me what your first pick was this week, the name of the song, and who it's by.
A lot of what we experience in adulthood or throughout our lives as connection comes from how we were raised. And so our family song is As by Stevie Wonder. And it just gives this beautiful portrayal of love being infinite and love being ever flowing, closeness and safety being ever present. Um, my grandmother,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm in complete agreement with you. Tell me about your grandmother.
Yeah, my grandmother, she recently turned 78, but when she turned 75, we had a big birthday party for her. And at the end of the party, we played her favorite song, which is As. And we
Oh,
all just got together and just did this big, huge family hug. And it was just a reminder of just how close connection can feel and how beautiful it can be, whether familial, romantic, friendship. That safety and closeness is so important in in our human experience. So yeah, that's why I chose that song.
I love that so, so much. And I think as I went through the playlist this week, your picks and into mine, that certainly your picks influenced what I was listening to this week. And I was thinking a lot about intimate relationships and trying to flip the script a little bit for it to not just be romantic, but like you were saying, like familial relationships and the intimacy that comes with those, the relationships you have with your girlfriends, like I have girlfriends that are
Yes.
like sisters to
They're
me, like that.
soulmates.
Yeah, that I mean, that are like those are some of the most intimate relationships that I have. They know everything
Yes.
about me, my
Yes.
deepest,
Yes.
darkest secrets.
Yes.
So I think that it was great to kind of think about this week's playlist and the songs that made this playlist in lots of different ways as it related to intimacy. And I shared with you, when we were chatting in our pre-interview, Songs in the Key of Life album is one that I listen to on the regular. I know it back to front. I know every song on it. It was life changing for me. It's one of those albums that I'd heard a lot. It came out, like you said, in 1976. I was a very small child when it came out, a baby, but I heard these songs, throughout my young life. And then when I had moved to Los Angeles in the early 90s, I had a roommate named Erica Ferret, who I still am in touch with and love dearly. And she had this album and she loved it. And I can remember hearing it from her and thinking, like, oh, one of my very first memories of songs that I loved as a kid was Sir Duke. And I still love Sir Duke.
Yes.
You want me to get up out of a chair and start moving like the craziest person in the room? You put on Sir Duke and I am up. I love that song. It's instant, like happy smile for
Yeah.
me. And so I heard Sir Duke coming out of her room, Erica's room, when we were living together in California. And it just sort of like revived. I was like, wait, are you listening to Songs in the Key of Life? And she's like, I love that album. And from then on, it was almost just our constant soundtrack. So the album found me again, it found me in childhood, found me again in my young adulthood. And it's just never left me since then. And I think As is just like one of my favorites on there. Obviously, Sir Duke, too, one of my favorite songs that I remember like first loving as a child. But everything there, Summer Soft, Isn't She Lovely, Joy Inside
Yes.
My Tears. Like, I mean,
Yes.
they're
Yes.
all just beautiful songs. And when I was a kid, I loved the Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8, a season for everything Bible verse was always something that it resonated with me. I'm not a super deeply religious person, but that always made sense to me, that there is a time for everything, and sort of where you are is where you're supposed to be. And when I first heard As, it was a like a musical representation of that sentiment for me, right?
Yes.
Kind of what you were saying, like love is infinite, love is safe. And it really painted a beautiful picture for what that looked like. And it makes me so happy. Like, it just feels like a hug thinking about this being your family song. You know, again, I
Does that
love that
mean
idea because it does. It encompasses everything in one song. It's uplifting, it's groovy, it makes you want to dance around the room, like,
yeah.
and then you get that amazing dance break in the middle of the song. It's a 7-minute song that I wish was 70 minutes. Like, I
Yes,
love the
yes,
song
yes,
that
yes,
much.
yes. I love that you said the Bible verse that pulls you into the song. And do me a solid, and please, can you repeat it for me?
Yes, it's the Ecclesiastes verse.
Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, it's chapter 3, verses 1 through 8, and it's
Yes,
there's a season for everything, a time to a time to dance, a time to cry, a time to
yes,
plant.
yes,
I'm
yes.
butchering the Bible verse, but you
No,
know
you're
the
not
one I'm
butchering
speaking
it.
of.
No, because it just reminded me of one of the lyrics in As is when he says that you could wish that you were born in a different time and space, but like your plate, God placed you right where you're supposed to
Yep,
be, right?
yep,
Um,
I
every
love it.
time I listen to the song, I mean, it just brings tears to my eyes, just how beautiful and profound it is. And this song was made before I was born,
Yeah.
and it's just it's so relevant. And that's what music does. It kind of transcends time, and just it just pierces me. So I
Same. That's a great
love the
word for this. And this
song.
whole album, I feel like you could take the
Yeah.
music away from this album even and just read the lyrics, and you'd have an amazing book of like reflections and meditations, right?
Yes.
This from beginning to end, no matter what you listen to, no matter which song you pulled, you're going to get some like really brilliant insight. And again, one of the reasons I just love Stevie Wonder and will never ever quit this album. It's it's been on repeat since the early 90s for me and will continue to be that way. So definitely so glad that you brought this to the show. And it made me think too. I'm like, I'm gonna have to do a whole songs in the key of life episode because
Yes.
I
Oh my
literally could
goodness.
talk about that
So
album
wonderful.
all
Yes.
day. So you may be back, Nancy. We may have a full Stevie Wonder episode.
I can't wait. Look at, and I'm gonna bring my grandmother with me. She would love
Oh,
this.
I would love it. There's nothing I love more than the wisdom of a grandmother.
Oh
So
yes.
I'm here for that all day.
Yes. Yes.
Well, as we transition out of the amazing Stevie Wonder, I was really impressed by your second pick as well. This was an artist I was not familiar with. I always call out when somebody brings a new artist to the show. I was not familiar with this artist or this song, so I'm so anxious to learn about this particular spoken word track. I thought that this was so cool. So tell me about your second pick, the name of the song, and who sings it.
The song is Intimacy, and it is by an artist named Londrelle who does meditative music. Um, he actually defines what intimacy is to him in this song a few times.
Hmm.
It's like on repeat what intimacy is. And so I chose this song because we are talking about connection. And I define intimacy as safety and closeness. And he goes through a really good description of what intimacy looks like for him.
Yep.
And I think that with his choice of universal words, that a lot of people can connect to his idea or his definition of what intimacy is.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that this song was first off, it's like such a vibe. Do you know what I mean? Like you can sink into it immediately. Like it definitely was one where I was like, "Oh, this is what we're doing now." Like, hold on a minute while I light my candle and get
Yes.
myself comfy. So I loved that. And it did, like, it seemed like this would be a perfect song for you to work with in your line of work, because I think it does give you a perfect opportunity to say, okay, this is Londrelle's definition of intimacy. Does this resonate with you? What
Mhm.
pieces do you like? What pieces do you not? And so that kind of gave me, sort of led me into this next question for you. But how much of your intimacy coordination is like scripted versus improvise, like when you're coming to a situation. And I know certainly you're going to work differently than you do with, young actors versus, say, a couple that is coming to you for some intimacy work. But do you really have to kind of go with the moment where and meet people where they are? Or is it pretty, like you said, like if somebody comes in to learn how to cha-cha, you're going to teach them the cha-cha, to go back to go back to dance references. How much fluidity is there whenever you're doing this kind of work?
Yeah, so we always start off with very basic practices, finding out access needs, comfortability levels. We go through different styles of touch. These are things that are everyone, no matter, excuse me, if I'm working with couples or if I'm working with performers, with families, we always want to talk about what feels most comfortable. What does your consent look like? What are your boundaries in this space of what we're learning? And then we curate what looks best for them when it comes
Okay.
to intimacy. So it's the part that's scripted is the learning piece where we are talking about all of the information that's needed to explore your personal boundaries in intimacy, your personal comfortability. With what we're doing, whether it is, again, whether it's performative or whether it's personal. And then we go into more, it's not improvised, but it's curated to support what they need
Got it.
in the space of being intimate with the partner.
I love this. I shared this with you as well. Growing up as a kid in the 80s and working in Hollywood in the Me Too era, like while it was happening, I guess the era that spawned Me Too. I was
Mhm.
there in the bad days, not the
Yeah, yeah.
post. But I feel like that, like consent was not ever messaging I was given as a young woman. It really wasn't. And it's something that I'm so proud is part of the conversation now. It's something that I enforce with my daughter all the time, day in, day out. And so I just really love knowing that there are people out there whose business it is legitimately to enforce consent and maintaining boundaries. So I love that you're doing that. And I love that you're doing it with young women. I love that you're doing it with everyone, young men. I guess maybe that, like everybody needs that training around consent, right? But I love that our girls are finally hearing that messaging and that that's such a big piece of what you do. So thank you for that.
You know, I love that you bring up, I love that you brought up how it was so taboo before now. And I know that the Me Too movement has been within this decade, right? But I know that there were many trailblazers before who were speaking out and who wanted consent to be a part of so many different disciplines, not just art. I know right now I'm focused on art, but in so many different disciplines that we had so many trailblazers and women and men who were speaking out who were not heard. So I think that it's important that we are making this language very universal and very common. So I'm always like I love what I do. I love that I get to do it, and I especially love that I get to influence the younger generation of young artists coming up,
Yeah.
and even getting to integrate this work with couples and with families and within therapy settings and things like that. But I love that it's going to become so common. It's going to be so well known and so well practiced that this is something hopefully that our younger generation doesn't have to put on repeat, that our older generations have become so, I guess, comfortable with saying that they got through it. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and it's the ultimate show of mutual respect, right?
yeah,
I feel like consent and respect are so closely tied together, and so I think with enforcing consent comes reinforced self respect, and so I love that that becomes kind of a byproduct of consent as well. So
absolutely.
important, and I'm so glad that this is a job now, right? That there are people
Yes.
that are paid to make sure that this messaging is being brought to the forefront. So, yes, all good there. I love that. And now that we've spent so much time talking about words, I'm going to completely flip the script as we head into my two picks. So, for my first song, I chose a song that tells a beautiful story, at least in my mind, with zero words. And I think it also creates a high level of intimacy, again, with no words at all. And my first pick this week is a song called When I Fall in Love by the Miles Davis Quintet.
Mm,
So I chose this song. I've been wanting to bring some Miles Davis to the show for a while. And I was late in life. Miles Davis was a later in my musical journey discovery for me. I was not ever a big jazz person. A lot of times the improvisation in jazz stressed me out a little bit. I didn't like that I couldn't predict where it was going, which is entirely like the magic of jazz now that I've embraced
yes.
it. But I think in my
Yeah.
younger years, it stressed me out because it wasn't very predictable. And when I met my husband, he's a huge jazz fan, and Miles Davis is one of his all time favorites. And so I just became entrenched in it. And I feel like that, you know, this song reminds me of those early days in our relationship. And so it was an easy one to go back to for me because I'm able to conjure those feelings of like brand new love and the level of intimacy that is required when you're truly getting to know someone on a deep level for the first time. And I love that this song gave me so much space to sort of create that story or vibe or mood in my head with no influence of lyrics. I think you can tell from the way I've reacted to your first two picks, lyrics are really important to me. I'm a big lyrics gal. Some people are music people and they listen for like, the beat or the bass or the drum or whatever. For me, music is just like a way to get the lyrics into my ears. Like I
Yeah.
really crave the knowledge in lyrics. So to take a step and really dive into Miles Davis and be able to just fall into his music and embrace sort of the imagination that came with that was so different and kind of uncomfortable for me, but it ended up being such an enriching experience. And I think also, too, kind of led me to a vulnerable place with music in that I didn't have the lyrics to rely on to determine if I liked something or not. I had to really like feel the song. And if ever there was an artist that can make you feel anything, I think it's got to be Miles Davis.
Miles
So
Davis. Yes.
I just love that. And I thought this might be an interesting conversation too, to talk about, like when you are trying to get people to that place of, I'm thinking specifically of actors, and I love the way you phrased it, out of their personal sort of space and into their professional performative space. Do you ever use music to set the mood, or do you ever like, is that ever a piece? How does that figure in?
So, yes, we use music to explore connection to the art that we are exploring, or the alikeness and differences between performers.
Mhm.
And even when it comes to characterization, I usually introduce thoughts using a playlist. I encourage actors to bring playlists that they have listened to, that pretty much like sum up the character that they are playing, or even moments or moods that this character has. We use music to de-roll meditative sounds, or like you said, Miles Davis with no lyrics, something that can just allow them to go from performer to personal space and become themselves again.
Yeah.
Um, we use musical overtones and undertones to express a piece during pre-show music. We
Yeah.
like to let the audience connect to what they're about to witness. Also, it's a nice touch to our storyboards. Whenever we are starting off
Mm.
working with performers, we'll storyboard what is going to happen, the mood of a moment, and we use music. Yeah.
I love that. I'm not surprised, but I'm so happy to hear that it does figure in that way because, the fun thing about a song like this Miles Davis track, really any of his songs, but this one in particular, is every time I listen to it, I can close my eyes and I can conjure a full scene, and sometimes the story is the same, sometimes it's different, but I just love that, I imagine that imagination has a place in intimacy work, at least like you were saying, in terms of envisioning the character and then embodying that character. So I love that music does figure in as you're storyboarding or early in the process to kind of
Yeah,
get
and it
where you
also
need to go.
supports the pace and the intention
Mm,
and the emotion of a scene or characterization techniques that we're using.
yep.
So yeah,
I love that. Well, I'm going to close out the playlist today the same way we started it, with a super happy, instant good mood song that anytime I'm feeling sad, if I'm having a bad day, if it's cloudy, if I get bad news and I want to instantly turn it around, it's this track for me every single time. It's played a lot. It's a well-known tune, but it's played a lot because it's so stinking good. I will love this song forever and always. And it is a song called Lovely Day by the amazing Bill Withers.
yes,
Yeah, this is from his Menagerie album from 1977. Again, I was a baby when this came out, but there's almost no time in my life I can remember not hearing this song. It's just kind of something that I've always heard, and from the first moment I heard it, I loved it. Again, I think that this one speaks to me. I was talking about how I was thinking about different kind of intimate relationships I have, and this one really ties me to like my intimate friendships. And I
yay!
think that the song, just one look at you and I
Just
know it's
look
going to
at
be a
you.
lovely day, like it's just, and that's my
And
girls, like not that my
yes,
husband doesn't
yes,
fulfill that role. He certainly does, but
absolutely, yes.
sometimes you just need your girls and they understand you in a different way. And I love that I can be intimate with them in a way that I can't in any other relationship. Like we talked about this a little too before we started recording, like just that bond you have with your girls, with your chosen sisters. Like it's unlike any other relationship that I have. And this song kind of sums that up for me. Like just one look at you and I know it's going to be a lovely day. I know wherever we go, whether we're just like meeting up to have lunch or we're going on a girls trip, we're going to bring it. It's going to be a blast, and I'm going to
Yeah,
be a better person from having interacted with this
with
chosen
you.
sister of
Yes.
mine. I think that that's always like top of mind when I hear this one. So I'm assuming this was a song that you were familiar with and
I am
knew.
very familiar with this
Yeah.
song. Absolutely. I love how you are bringing your friendships into the intimate connection.
Well, I think that this week's playlist has been very inspirational, very high vibration. So I think that this is a really great one for those that are interested in forming some of those deeper connections, or paying attention to them, I think, differently. I think that was one of the things that was kind of an added gift of this week's episode and having you on the show, Nancy, is it gave me a chance to reflect on a lot of those intimate relationships. And again, I think when I hear the word intimacy, I immediately go to like a romantic relationship, but I love that we were able to explore all different kinds. We've talked about familial relationships, we've talked about relationships with your close friends. We've talked about it in the romantic sense. We've talked about it from a performative sense. So I think that it helped me understand and expand my definition of intimacy to kind of dig into what you do for a living, and know that there's so much value in that, and that I think with intimacy comes great responsibility. And I love that that's part of your messaging as well. Again, to me, building up the responsibility end of intimacy only creates that consent and the self respect that I think is so critical for this next group of young folks that are going to be ruling the world before too long. So, again, I'm so glad and grateful for what you do. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was so nice. Well, Nancy, I definitely want to let listeners know where they can find out about you. So, listeners, to learn more about Nancy and Class Intimacy Acts, you can visit her website at classintimacyacts.com. I'm going to spell that for you. It's ClassIntimacyActs. It is plural. So, you can visit Class Intimacy Acts. And on the website, you'll have access to more information about merging art and intimacy, frequently asked questions, as well as a class and event schedule. So definitely check that out. And as always, please be sure to follow, download, and share this show. And if you love listening, please drop a review on Apple or Spotify for us. Last but not least, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix and What Are You Listening To, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.